Hola a todos, bienvenidos a Somos Founders Podcast. Les saluda Edgar Navas desde Portland, Oregon. Today we're going to do our episode in English, and I have a really good, special guest, man. I've been following Juan, for quite a while. Juan reached out to us, and been following his journey and his venture. He is a neighbor of us here in Seattle. Juan Medina, founder of Lalo.App. Lalo, ¿cómo estás, Juan?
Muy bien. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be on the podcast. And there's when I found out you were in the Northwest as well, I'm like, nice. Like we need more Latinos up here. So
Oh,
I was
absolutely.
excited to
No. That's what I was excited too. And when you reached out, I was like, wow, we found one in Seattle. Awesome. Because we've been, we've been organizing here in Portland.
yeah.
We had some friends in Seattle as well. Some of them have moved on to other ventures, but it's a small community of startup founders, very small. People will be surprised with all the technology and everything that's happening around in Portland, Seattle. The lad community, the startups, I mean, count them with your fingers.
Yeah, for sure.
And
And
that's
I guess
about it.
the only downside is I'm a Sounders fan, but we
That
already
that's what
talked
we
about
said.
that.
Like, yeah, we saw that logo. It's like, oh, ya empezamos mal aquí con esto. Pero bueno, you have to have a defect, man. That's all right. We'll give you a pass
Hey,
on that.
yeah, my wife's, got a whole list for me that I'm working on already. So, we'll just add that.
Or let's just add that one to the pot. Yeah. Yeah, I gotta tell my daughter, because my oldest daughter actually plays for the Thorns Academy. So
Oh, wow.
yeah.
That's amazing. Love
So
that.
she's gonna be like, well, guess who I interviewed today? A Sounders fan. It's like, no. But yeah, no, that's exciting. Again, excited to make the connection. We're practically neighbors. Hopefully we get to meet each other in person, and we'll talk about more what we do also here in Portland offline. But this is centered on you, man. The episodes, what we do is just centering you, telling your journey. How do you got here, and well, just what you do. But let's start from the beginning. Who are you?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And it ties into what I'm doing as well. But I'm originally, my family's from South America. So my mom is Colombian, my dad was Bolivian. I lived in Colombia when I was younger and then moved to the US when I was 5. And of all places, from Barranquilla, Colombia to Louisville, Kentucky. So
Oh,
that was
wow.
quite a
Okay.
jump.
Yeah. Well, quite a change. Yeah.
Yeah. But I loved it there, great people, basketball,
Yeah.
horses. I was too early for the bourbon, but now I can appreciate it. And kind of moved around a lot, all over the place, because of my stepdad's job or my mom's school. But lived in New Jersey for a while. Got the chance to go to high school in France, in
Oh, wow.
Paris, and then moved back to the US for college. Spent some time in the Midwest, in Chicago, a big Latino community there.
Yeah.
And then about 10 years ago, got the opportunity to work for a small little web startup called Amazon.com, and have been here in Seattle ever since. And I'm married and have a 9-year-old daughter. So that's kind of the quick tour of who I am.
You are. Wow. So bouncing around, and it gave you like a pretty well, worldly view of because like you mentioned, coming from Barranquilla, then to Louisville, it's a different America than Jersey. So you've explored it all.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of different parts of the world, parts of the US. And, I think the biggest takeaway is like, we're more alike than we are different, even though we like to push on those differences a lot. But, I find that I can always connect with people on some level, whether they're immigrants or they're struggling with something, or we can always find a way to connect with people.
Right. So and I remember watching a video where you're telling part of the story, and I think that's how it ties into tech. But how do you got started in tech, being Latino, what piqued your interest in tech?
Yeah, so I didn't really enter the tech world until I joined Amazon now in 2012. And so for me, it was I was working at a healthcare company. It was a really big one, but it had a great mission, but it was just moving slowly for me. I was like, man, like really smart people. We all know what needs to be done, but it was like trying to like push a boulder uphill. And I was like, well, I'm not getting any younger. I want to work somewhere where I can make a difference and feel like I'm part of a growing company that's like exploring different solutions and like bringing things to market and working with smart people. And so for me, that place was tech, because it was really an industry that's recruiting the best and brightest and moves quickly, and it has the resources to affect change. And it's the resources, but also the mindset of like, hey, nothing's off the table in terms of what we can do. And so that was my original mindset. I didn't have a tech background at all, but Amazon, there's a lot of pros and cons of working at a company like Amazon, but I would say one of the pros is that they look at people from different backgrounds. So they weren't like turned off that I wasn't from a tech background. They were more like, hey, this is your experience. We don't have that kind of experience here. Like, come on board. And so,
I see. Yeah. I think that, you're right. That's the strength. Recognizing what they can learn from other industries and other perspectives.
For sure. And
And how was that? So you moved to Seattle, from Chicago. I mean, that's obviously a change, because it's also Seattle. Let's say, I mean, it's not very diverse in the city itself, as Chicago is. So being Latino in tech, we would talk to some others like, it's just like a whole different world.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's the diversity here in Seattle, you're right, isn't as much as like some of the bigger cities like a New York or a Chicago, LA. There is diversity in kind of the Asian communities here, Southeast Asian. So there's Indian, Vietnamese, Thai. So that was interesting, just kind of learning more about their cultures and their food. But certainly I miss some of that like Latino community and the food. And so I was fortunate to spend last week in Miami, and I was like, oh, wow, this is like
this is home.
I mean, it's a Spanish first community. So they're always like, they start with Spanish and
right. And then like,
you don't understand, then they switch to English. But between the sun and the food and the music and just the general culture, you're like
the Caribbean culture. You're like, oh yeah, feels closer to home. Yeah,
for sure.
So you spent 10 years in Amazon, and then when do you realize, hey, I want to go solo. I got to do something on my own.
It's a good question. For me, it was really in the middle of the pandemic. We were maybe 3 or 4 months into the pandemic. The George Floyd event had just exploded, in the US. And for me, it was kind of a moment of reckoning, of like looking in the mirror and saying like, okay, like you're in your early 40s, not getting any younger. You've kind of been through industry. You've been in big companies, like what's next, and realizing that I wasn't being completely fulfilled by my job in corporate, having always wanted to start my own thing. Like I own so many domain names, it's embarrassing, but like never taking the leap to say yes. I always had an excuse, and they were valid at the time, of like not enough money, or like, hey, just had a baby, or part of it is cultural too. Like my family was, more like, no, you go to college, then you go to business school, then you work for the big company, and like, that's how you do it. And like this thought of like, no, I'm going to quit my job at Amazon and just start my own business was like, what?
You're doing what? Yeah.
And so, but, I felt like I'd gotten to the place where I could take the risk, and if it didn't work out, there's always landing places where I could go back.
Right.
But I was ready to work on something that I was passionate about.
Yeah. And so how did the idea for Lalo.App came about?
So really I took a break from Amazon just to kind of clear my head a bit. And so that was super helpful, just to kind of get my mental wellness in check, because you kind of need a a blank slate to think. And so
Right.
I took some time to like, okay, unplug, figure out what was important to me. And I started to think about, a lot about family, because being an immigrant, my daughter's 9 years old, and she was starting to ask questions like, tell me about my grandfather, or, tell me about Colombia. What's the food like? We'd watch soccer games together,
Yeah.
but she was largely born and raised in Seattle. And so we're so disconnected from my heritage. And so that was a theme. And then the second was really this moment that stuck with me, where we were visiting my dad's grave in Kentucky, where he's buried. He passed away almost 18 years ago from multiple sclerosis. But at that point, I was with my wife, my daughter, my sister, and my wife was like, "Hey, Juan, tell everyone a story about your dad." And I was like, "Oh man, like a way to put me on the spot." Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it kind of got me thinking of like, why didn't I have those stories? And, part of it was, I was in my early 20s, and maybe I hadn't been in the mindset of asking him, how did you grow up? Why did you come to the US? Like,
Right.
But now having my own family, that's the time to reflect back and ask those kinds of questions. And so going on that journey myself, even though my dad had passed away, of finding relatives in Bolivia and asking them those questions, and his sister, his cousins, finding his roommates from University of Kentucky. And so,
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, getting like a picture of those slices of his life and putting them together to better understand him. And in that process, better understanding myself, right? My own history and identity. And so then thinking, well, this isn't rocket science, but like, how do we make it easier for people to do that? And I think it could be hugely valuable. And so that's really what set all this off.
No, absolutely. And like I said, because, watching some videos, just like, wow, yeah. And reflecting, like you said, on your own personal experience. I said, like, things that I would have loved to ask my grandparents.
Right.
And at the time, you're a teenager, you're a young adult, or you're a kid. And in some instances, I mean, you're not thinking about that. You're not thinking about, mortality, or, you're just thinking, you're in your own little space.
Exactly.
And by the time you realize, it's, usually too late.
Right.
And those questions are gone. I mean, they're, going to be unanswered.
Right. And so, like, in building Lalo, it was almost like, here's an excuse, to ask those questions, or a platform to help you have those conversations before it's too late. So.
Right. So, and where does the name come from?
Yeah. So Lalo was my dad's nickname. So,
okay.
For a long time, that was maybe the hardest decision. And I'm like thinking every possible name, memory this, or family this. And it's like, my wife was like, "Hey, Juan, why don't you just use your dad's name?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's a really good idea."
It's catchy. It's short. Yeah.
Short, catchy, easy to pronounce. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So when did you have that moment of clarity, when you were, deleting your database?
Yes.
And so, like, this is what I want to do. How did that happen? I mean, did you just like, we're sitting down and it's like, this is what needs to happen, and this is how I'm going to do it?
Yeah. So it was, it was a journey probably of several years, I would think, but like in the moment, it was like thinking, first things first, like I have to get myself healthy first. And so it's kind of like that, when you're on a plane and they're like, "Hey, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, and then you can help everyone else." So it was kind of like, first I have to get my head straight. And so, like, taking the time off, and, everything from exercise to like eating healthier, of like, spending time with my family, taking my daughter to school, and, making dinner for the family at night. My wife was like, "Who is this person?"
I'm like, what? Like, whoa. What are you not telling me?
And so I think just like getting back to what was important, of like living in the moment, and not thinking, "Oh, I have a meeting tomorrow, or I have to do this presentation," or "Sorry, honey, I can't play with you because I have this meeting," or blah, blah, blah. Like, no, like, I'm going to like just focus on, what's right in front of me and what's important. And so that was step one. And then two, just kind of talking to a lot of people. So like people that had become entrepreneurs in the
Yeah.
past or that had run a similar journey. And then trying to really focus on being in tune with the things that I was passionate about, and then kind of taking it from there to say, okay, this is what I'm passionate about. Here's where I see an opportunity, because like end of life and this immigrant story isn't a place where technology has spent a lot of time, in my opinion, like trying to solve.
Right.
And then thinking, okay, like this is something I could get excited about, and there's a big opportunity there. And so like, yeah, all of those things kind of coming together over time.
Yeah. So you start putting together, what was the first real step that you take, like, okay, this is happening, this is, I'm doing this? And what was your first step? I mean, and that's just for people that have ideas, and it's like, okay, how do I take that idea to, this is a reality, this is really going to happen now?
Yeah. So really the first step was, at Amazon, we call this process the PR FAQ. So it's called a press release plus FAQs. And
Okay.
so it's basically a 6 to 8 page document. So it's a Word doc. And so the first page is you write your own press release. So you say, hey, like Juan launches Lalo. It is a solution to preserve family memories.
Yeah.
It's available in the App Store, costs $29.99. It launched in 2025, let's say.
Yeah.
And so like that kind of like sets the future vision of like what you want to get to.
Okay.
And that's one page. And then the following pages are frequently asked questions. So these are questions that kind of get at the heart of the idea. Like, how big is this opportunity? Okay, $20 billion.
Right.
Who is this for families in the US? Who are your competitors? Maybe it's Facebook, maybe it's
right.
Instagram. How are you going to make money? What's the product going to look like? So it kind of, you just ask yourself these kind of big questions around basically a business plan, right? Like,
yeah.
How are you going to make money? How big is the opportunity? And
how are you going to launch it? Whose money is going to fund this? How are you going to fund
who's
it?
Who's paying for this?
It's who's paying you while you're building?
Right. And so like, that's kind of where I started. And then from there, it was about going through the process. Like I said, I did it manually, right? I found my relatives in Bolivia.
Yeah.
I found,
oh, wow. Okay.
His roommates in college. I recorded these conversations. I got pictures. I put it all together.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, that's kind of like the rough process, and that feels good. And now how do we take that and automate it or scale it in a way that we can use technology to make that process?
How do you curate all that information?
Yeah.
So I'm just imagine, like, remember when we're about the same age. I think I'm a little bit older, but remember, every family had those photo albums in a coffee table.
Yes.
And then but there were just pictures, no descriptions, and they were great. I mean, I'm sure if we go to my parents' house, they're somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And they're great memories. Every once in a while you open them and you just flip back and forth, and you may remember some of those pictures, some of those moments, but sometimes you won't. I mean, a lot of time has passed. And it would be great, like, what you're doing. And a little, just describe me, how do you do it now? How do you take those pictures and put the memory together?
Yeah. So in the Lalo.App today, which is available in the App Store, it's an early version, but basically the way we've laid it out is we think of them as journeys. So you say like, hey, I'm building this memory for myself, or of my own life, or it's for my family or my grandmother. So you kind of set that intention at the beginning.
Yeah.
Once you get into the space, so you're saying, okay, maybe this is for my abuelita, and you have a few options, but the first thing you do is really set like a photo of your grandmother, and then there's a list of questions there that you can kind of choose from. So it might say like, where did she grow up, or how did she meet my grandfather? So that kind of starts the conversation.
Okay.
The third piece is about inviting people to that space. It'll ask you like, who might benefit from these stories, or who can help you tell these stories. And so being able to invite your mom or your cousins to that space. And then the last piece is that ability to share, pictures or video or audio. And we're working on making that easier over time, of being able to, create those photo albums and be able to voice over them and say like, hey, this was my wedding, this was my birthday, and those things. So we're slowly getting there, but that's kind of the vision of being able to almost recreate that experience that you just said, right? Of flipping through a photo album and having that voice to say, oh, that's your cousin so-and-so. And,
a narrator, just going through things that you may not remember, or somebody else's perspective from the same event.
Right. And your cousin might be like, oh no, I don't remember him that way at all.
Oh, he was a great person. No, he was
no. So
but it's great. I mean,
conversation, but that's okay.
So this is just like a closed room. I mean, it's not, it's by invitation only. You obviously this is just your family, your friends, family or friends' memories, which again, it doesn't only have to be families. I mean, I just imagine, for us that have been out of college for so long, inviting all your, like you did for your dad, a group of friends, like, hey, you remember that because there have been things that I see in a group channel I don't remember at all.
Right.
I'm like, man, am I getting that old? Because I just don't have recollection, or was I really that drunk that night?
That's how I got just that tattoo.
I was like, like, all right. So that explains a lot of things. Okay.
Yeah. So it is a private space. Like, you only can share it with the people that you want. Even within the space, let's say there's 20 people, you can share specific photos with specific people in that room.
Okay.
So we tried to bias towards that privacy.
Right. Yeah. So, and one of the things about privacy is that because these are memories that are very, very personal. This is not like Facebook or Instagram where you already acknowledge this is for the public. So everybody is get to know that these are just kind of like your very inner circle. Like I said, something extremely personal. Yes. You don't want to just be blasting out to everyone, but just a select group. So how do you cope with that privacy, and what are you guys doing for privacy and security in the data?
Yeah, absolutely. And so part of it is in the design of the application of biasing towards that privacy, ensuring only the people you want to see it can see it. You're not going to be able to like search and see like, oh, my friend from high school is on here too, let me try and get into that space. Like, you're not going to be able to do that.
Okay.
We're not going to hold on to like, some apps have gotten in trouble because they hold on to like your contact information from your address book. We're not going to blast out everyone in your address book and say, oh, look who's here. I'm just doing Lalo, why don't you connect? And although that would be great from a business perspective, it's not great from a privacy perspective. And so there we've had to say like, no, we're not going to store that information.
Right.
And then the third piece is really around how we encrypt data. Everything's encrypted at rest, like in our databases. We're not like mining that data or saying like, hey, you talked about, the Timbers, and then all of a sudden you go on
all your ads
on CNN and it's like, oh, get your Timbers gear. We're not mining that data. And then finally, we're going to allow people to take that data with them and do it in a way that's easy to export and to view in the future. So if you say, hey, like, I'm done, like, for whatever reason, we're not going to try to, we'd love to know why, but if you say, hey, I'm done using the application, I want to take all of these things with me, we're going to make that easy for you to do so that you feel safe.
That you own it.
Yes, exactly.
No, I think that's huge. That was one of my later questions, because
Yes.
we see. I mean, it's a reality business. Some business go up, and then some of them disappear on their own. Some of them get
Yeah.
acquired.
Yes.
Which is what we hope. That you grow exponentially and you get
Sure.
acquired, and that's what, like, what happens with your information, what happens to the experience, or like you're vested into all these applications, social media, and once something changes and you're like, oh, I gotta go, or
Right.
like, but all that work, I mean, let's be honest, it's your work you put into it.
Yes.
Where does it go? And if you
Yeah.
don't agree, and I mean, for example, on Meta, you don't own the content, you can't easily just download it.
Right.
So how do you say, like, especially something as important what you're doing,
right,
like that personal photo curated album, how do you take it in perpetuity and, quite honestly, pass it on?
Yes. Yeah. And that is, when we think of our product pillars, it's like, one, make it easy for people to pull in information from different places. Two, helping give people the tools to create their stories in ways that are interesting and engaging. And then lastly, that permanence of like, how do we ensure that it endures over time? And maybe it's helping people print a physical photo album, or, in the more extreme situation of like, let's say, this would never happen, but let's say Elon Musk is like, hey, I'm going to buy Lalo. And people are like, no, thank you.
I'm
and
out.
Then then we'll help people, take it with them, to your point, because they put in the work. It's their data, it's their work, and it's their family history and memories. Like,
exactly.
we don't own that. And so, it's kind of that full circle of creating, at the end of the day, creating trust, right? And like what we're doing, so that you can share those intimate memories.
Right. No. I think it's fantastic. It's a phenomenal idea, because it's just it's your probably just your most valuable possession. I mean, everything materialistic, when you're gone, it's gone. It's going to be divided up or gone.
Yeah.
But this is something that, number one, we tend not to collect. Like I said, when your relatives pass, nobody has the answers to a bunch of questions. So if you're able to gather them and then just pass them to the next generation, I mean, I just imagine myself receiving this treasure of information and listening to my grandma's voice,
right,
or my great grandma that also helped my parents raise me. It would be phenomenal to hear those stories from the early 1900s. I mean, it would be sensational.
Absolutely.
It would be amazing. Yeah, and then just keep adding with my story, so my kids now, they can like hear when I'm gone. Then you can listen to, what was it living in, growing up in Mexico, or coming to as an immigrant to the U.S. From a different perspective, and then having friends tell them, oh yeah, your dad was a royal idiot. He was not as smart as he portrays to be. Yeah.
You got,
but they'll be fun.
The full story. But for sure, that is right. And I've heard there's a podcast, I'll get the name for you, but there's a rabbi that was on this podcast I was listening to that deals with loss quite a bit, and he was saying, kind of similar to what you just said, of like, hey, when you lose someone you love, they don't want your stuff, they don't want the boxes of stuff, they don't want your furniture, what they want is your memories. And so have those conversations and share those pictures and those stories. And absolutely, it's so important.
Yeah, that's going to be something that you don't get rid of. The rest, you'll be like, I don't want it. Maybe you cherry pick, and then the rest just goes.
The big red sofa with the plastic still on it, you're going to be like,
that's going to be gone. That goes to Goodwill. Exactly.
Unfortunately.
So you started Lalo during during the pandemic, with all the all the difficulties, we're locked up, there's a lot of uncertainty. How do you fund this? How do you get people to, or have you raised capital to this, or you just self-funded?
So it's been a mix. So
okay,
at the beginning, it was completely self-funded. And originally that was my plan. I was planning on making it on my own. Had some initial conversations with investors. They didn't go terribly well. They were like, I don't really get this. And right around August, I decided to just record a video of myself, just telling my story. I had a few slides and it was 90 seconds and I put it on Twitter and I just said, hey, this is my story. This is what I'm doing. And like magic, like investors started reaching out and,
wow.
In the grand scheme of like venture capital, it wasn't a lot of money, but for me, it was. And so I was like, okay, great. Like that's enough to get us through the next year. And now we're at the year. And so like now, we're in the process of raising a second round and it's going well. But yeah, that's been a whole learning of like managing cash and trying to find investors. And, now the economy is a little shaky. And so,
people are starting getting a little nervous.
Yeah. A little more conservative. And so, that's been easily one of the hardest parts of starting the business.
Well, and before the pandemic, you had to be in person, you had to be, hustling, and now with all of that, well, some of them, they have the ability to do like we're doing, via Zoom or any of the platforms, but has that been a little bit more of an easy process for you? Or do you feel that it's a little bit more impersonal and you don't get the right reading, you don't get to feel the investor?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, like pre-pandemic, whenever I wanted to like really sell a vision or like win a big deal, it was always in person. I'd be like flying out, let's have dinner, let's talk. And like, that's how you did it. And now there is kind of a layer in between. And so you have to work like extra hard to like communicate that and sell the vision. And, in these early stage startups, it's often just about the team and the vision and maybe how far you've come, but like you're selling something in the future. And that's so much harder to make that connection, remotely. But it's kind of the
I feel that's become more like transactional. It's more data driven, which I mean, it has its pros and its cons, but I think the con is that it's just transactional. It's impersonal. And that makes you feel more of a mercenary than, like you said, you're not buying me, you're not buying my story. And because ultimately, that the investor is it's putting money on you, not on you're the one that's selling this idea. And it's either, and right now things are just because of this, that they're more focused. Well, I have another meeting in an hour, 45 minutes, and you got 15 minutes, kid. And get going with it.
My checklist and, ooh, you only meet 8 out of 10. So sorry. And it's like, well,
yeah, exactly. So if you don't have the, at least, an A minus, then you don't go to the next call and
next level or whatever. Yeah. But it's like, in these areas that are innovative or they're new, you might not have a lot of data points. And that's the whole point of, early stage investment, of like finding these niches that are a bit more white space. And so that's what I hope, we continue to do, is find investors that kind of get the story, feel the need personally, and say like, I think it's time for a solution here. And these are the guys and women to do it.
Right. And do you feel you have, I mean, I don't think you're in a crowded area, because quite honestly, I haven't heard of any solutions like yours. I mean, other than apps like social media, which is just hugely it's not very focused on creating these memories, but Ancestry, which is more geared to like who you are, more like in my opinion a little creepy, what's behind that. But how's your ecosystem? Is it pretty crowded? I mean, who's your main competition in this?
Yeah, I think you talked about a few of them. So like, places where people are storing their pictures and stories today, social media. Ancestry has a flavor of like that, history around your family. We see some of those as complementary, over time, if folks want to add in that genealogy information, I think we'll help them do that. but it's, largely it's kind of that fighting for people's time. And today we've seen people spending between 4 to 6 hours a day on their phone, and a lot of that is on social media.
Right.
So, even though it might not be a direct competitor for the solution, it's kind of a competitor for their time of like, hey,
Exactly.
how do we get you to divert some attention to some of these other solutions? And so, yeah, that's kind of what we're trying to do of finding the right balance of this private ecosystem, but also not have it feel like homework or like a lot of work to go through this thing. We want to make it fun and engaging as well.
Right. No. And again, yeah, if you're spending 4 to 6 hours, might as well do something productive.
Yeah.
Creating a legacy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That gets passed on, and it's actually fun. Yeah. It's who you are.
Absolutely. You think of like, you do a lot of storytelling, for work, and PowerPoints and Zooms. And it's like, yeah, do that for yourself, for your family.
Exactly. And we don't. Yeah. No. We don't. And so walk me through the process. Like, if I download the app, I subscribe, say that's how you monetize. You pay for the service. Is that paying you individually, or just for the room? How does that work?
Yeah. So today it's free.
Okay.
But in the future, we will create kind of these family accounts and say, hey, this is the Medina family. You can add up to X number of people and pay a small monthly subscription for that. So that's
okay. Kind of so that's in the future. How do you monetize right now?
Yeah. So today we're not. So right now we're really just trying to, find the right combination of product and market, and being able to say, hey, we're on to something. And once we start to, we're certainly bringing customers on, but we'd love to see that engagement rate come up a bit, of like people that are coming back to use it over time.
Yeah.
Once we feel like we've unlocked that, then we'll start to monetize. But right now it's really just about learning and
just freemium get on board and so is it in English and Spanish, or just right now English?
Yeah, right now it is in English, but we have a lot of users in Mexico.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So like about 20% of our users are in Mexico, we've seen. And that's, just in the last 4 to 6 weeks, we saw this spike from Mexico.
And so interesting. Okay.
Now we're like, okay, maybe we need
maybe we need it. Yeah. We need to translate this thing. Yeah.
I definitely had it on the roadmap, but now we're like, maybe we need to push it up sooner.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, my wife is from this area, and even though her family's small and fairly tight, we do see the differences, the cultural difference. I mean, the American families aren't as tight as we are. I mean, everything's centered around family. Right. I mean, that's who we are. From Mexico all the way to Patagonia, everything is around the family, multi-generational. So I can see this just exploding in Latin America. I'm not that it wouldn't here, because people are very curious and who their grandparents are, especially as and you saw it with this the DNA testing. Right. That to me was a pro. Like, wow, everybody wanted to see that, which to me I find it fascinating.
Yes.
Everybody's doing like, and they ask me, would you do it? Like, why would I know exactly where I come from? So like, no, and I don't have that, but I just found it fascinating, how those services just went like boom, like crazy. And even before the pandemic, they were just growing like in double digits every year.
Absolutely. Yeah. There is, over time, as our families leave whatever countries we were from and go to other countries.
Yeah.
And that happens over, generations and generations. I think a lot gets lost. And so
right.
Like trying to reach back into the past and say, where did I come from? And like,
what
can I gather to put this story together?
Yeah. And even if the people that move around here in the States, like you say, I come from Kentucky and I'm in Oregon, and they end up here. Right. My wife's, her family's from Jersey and New York, and then she was born in Illinois, and then she's here. She grew up here. So, where do we, and they're from German descent, so
Yes.
it is, yeah. And for them, I could see this, like, oh yeah, I want to just not only have that paper trail that
Right.
you can get, or the DNA trail. Now I want actually a curated experience on who we were.
Right.
Yeah.
Like in your DNA, you might, like for me, I did the 23andMe, and it was like 25% Bolivian indigenous. And I was like, well, that's new. Like who in the
Yeah.
family can tell me about this, And
Yeah.
so it can start those conversations. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
And it's a super interesting, point. Is like, okay, this is who I am, and this is what makes me who I am.
right.
So
Absolutely.
Juan, right now you're in the process of raising more capital.
Yes.
What are your what's the next year looking like for Lalo?
Yeah. So the next year, we launched our public beta about a month ago. Over the next 6 weeks, we'll be doing a big PR public launch. So driving awareness that we're out there. In parallel, as I mentioned, really trying to hone in over the next 6 months and that the right product features and messaging to get people engaged so that it's
Yeah.
easy to use and people enjoy the experience. And hopefully being able to close out our investment round so that we can kind of fund the next 6 to 12 months of growth.
Of growth. Okay.
So
No,
it's
that's
really
fantastic.
just about trying to acquire customers and build the experience, around it that they're looking for.
Okay. So have you connected with any of the Latin VCs around the nation? Have you talked to any of them?
I have. Yep. I've talked to quite a few of them, and some have gone well, some have not gone so well. But we're plowing ahead, and I think a lot of the questions can be answered over time in terms of like, no, like people are using it, they're liking it, and
Yeah.
people's risk level varies, and so some of them are saying, well, show me a little bit more and come
Show me
back,
more. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
whereas others are like, no, I'm all in. And so yeah,
Oh, that's great. That's
yeah,
great.
so we'll keep moving forward.
Yeah. So what can we help with right now? I mean, what can we do to help you?
Yeah, I'd say two things. One is download Lalo, check it out, let me know what you think, and give me your honest feedback, what worked, what didn't work, so that we can improve. And then the second is, yeah, if you're interested in investing, or you might know someone that will invest, yeah, reach out and connect us. Over the next few weeks, we will be launching a We Funder campaign. So it'll be kind of crowdsourced investment, so anyone can invest even at a minimum of $100. And so,
Oh, wow.
be on the lookout for that announcement soon. So yeah, a way to get the community kind of involved and behind us.
Okay. Well, there's, I mean, we do have some suggestions. I mean, if you already talked to some of the Latino VCs, there is a fund here in Portland. It's called Elevate Capital. Have you heard of them?
I have not. Nope.
So it's a fund. It's actually funded also by the state of Oregon,
Cool.
to that exclusively invests in diverse founders.
Excellent.
And not only in Portland, obviously. I mean, they invest in, but they want to keep it close to Pac Northwest. So yeah, well, I'll send you the info on the principal, and
Okay.
yeah, they do take on early risk. I know
Great.
that because they funded a couple of ventures from that we know of here that were like right about where you are, launch, but
Yeah.
pre money and all that.
Yes. That's great. I'll make sure to wear my Timbers shirt for those.
Yeah, for that one, yeah, you should probably don't wear that. At least just don't wear that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, no, but that's fantastic. So we'll connect you with some people. I'm gonna download the app and give it a good run. So
Yeah.
give you some good feedback on UI, the UX, or whatever we can see. But it's exciting. I really like what you're doing, because again, it's something that quite honestly we've been thinking about my family. Like you and I were talking before starting. our parents are getting of that age, and we're thinking of the inevitable. And I would love to preserve some memories that otherwise will be lost when someone's gone.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got it. And again, thank you so much for having me on. Really enjoyed the conversation, and yeah, hopefully we can meet in person sometime.
Soon. I'll be in Seattle in a few weeks, so I'll ping you and if you come to Portland too, I'll take you to the Timbers game so you can see what really Soccer City USA is all about.
Okay, sounds like a deal.
Thank you so much, and please everybody follow Juan and Lalo.App app. Follow them in social media, and please subscribe. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.